The smart doorbell chimed at 2:17 a.m., and I wasn't sleeping anyway. Fina had been giving me the cold shoulder for 3 weeks now, claiming she needed distance and that our marriage had become a matter of principles. She'd moved into the guest bedroom, started locking her phone, and treated me like a roommate she barely tolerated. I'm Trent Ardell, and I've been married to Fina for 8 years. I manage construction projects for a design-build firm downtown, the kind of work that requires attention to detail and a healthy skepticism about what people tell you versus what they actually do. Those skills turned out to be more useful in my marriage than I'd ever imagined. The doorbell app on my phone showed a notification. Someone had triggered the motion sensor. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and opened the video feed. A black Tesla Model S sat in our driveway, and a man in an expensive coat was walking toward our front door carrying a leather weekend bag. I recognized him immediately. Evan Callum, Fina's ex-boyfriend from college, the one she dated for 2 years before we met, the one she claimed to have no contact with whatsoever when I'd asked about him 6 months ago after seeing his name pop up in her LinkedIn connections. The video showed Fina opening the door before Evan could ring the bell. She was wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas, the one she hadn't worn since our last anniversary. They embraced briefly, and she ushered him inside quickly, glancing around the neighborhood before closing the door. I sat there in the dark, watching the timestamp tick forward. 2:19 a.m. The motion sensor triggered again as the Tesla's headlights swept across the driveway, but the car stayed put. So this was what principles looked like. I saved the video clip to my phone and took a screenshot of the clearest frame showing Evan's face and the timestamp. Then I opened my laptop and created a new folder on the desktop. I named it Fina's Principles and saved both files inside. The guest bedroom door was closed, and I could hear muffled voices through the wall. Fina's laugh, the one she used to save for me, drifted down the hallway. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and tried to get some sleep, but my mind was already working through the implications. The next morning, I was up before dawn, sitting at the kitchen island with my coffee and laptop, when Fina emerged from the guest room. She was alone, wearing yoga pants and a tank top, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked refreshed in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. "Morning," she said, not quite meeting my eyes as she headed for the coffee maker. "Morning. Sleep well?" "Fine." She poured her coffee and added the almond milk creamer she'd started buying instead of the regular cream we'd always used. "I was thinking we should talk about some new arrangements." "Arrangements?" She turned to face me, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. "I've been doing some thinking about what I need right now. I think we need clearer boundaries while we figure things out." "What kind of boundaries?" "Well, I need more privacy. I don't want you going through my things or asking about my schedule all the time. And I think we should have separate spaces in the house. I'll stay in the guest room for now." I nodded slowly, taking a sip of my coffee. "That makes sense. I was actually thinking along the same lines." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "You were?" "Absolutely. If we're going to have boundaries, we should make them official, clear expectations for both of us." I opened my laptop and pulled up the document I'd been working on since 5 a.m. I drafted a cohabitation addendum that covers the main points: overnight guests, school pickup schedules, access to shared devices and accounts, that sort of thing. Fina's face went pale. "Overnight guests?" "Well, if we're having people stay over, we should probably give each other a heads up, right? Just common courtesy." I turned the laptop screen toward her. "Take a look and let me know what you think." The document was thorough. I'd included sections on financial responsibilities, household maintenance, and a detailed protocol for having visitors. The overnight guest section required 24-hour advance notice and included a clause about registering visitors with our home security system. "This seems a bit formal," Fina said, scrolling through the document. "I like things clear and documented. Helps avoid misunderstandings." I closed the laptop. "I'll email it to you so you can review it properly." She set down her coffee cup with a sharp clink. Trent, I don't think we need to make this so complicated. Oh, I think we do. I stood up and rinsed my mug in the sink, especially when it comes to principles. I went upstairs to shower and get ready for work. While Fina was in the kitchen, I sent her the cohabitation addendum via email. In the same message, I attached the screenshot from the doorbell camera with a simple caption. For reference, 2:17 a.m. My phone buzzed with a text from Fina before I'd even finished getting dressed. We need to talk. I replied, I'll be home around 6. We can discuss the addendum then. At work, I had trouble focusing on the blueprints spread across my desk. My project manager instincts were kicking in. The same systematic approach I used when a contractor tried to slip substandard materials past me or when a client changed their mind about specifications after we'd already broken ground. During my lunch break, I did some research. Evan Callum had married someone named Rhea Winters 3 years ago. She was listed as the co-owner of a marketing consultancy downtown. Their business address was public record, filed with the Secretary of State. I crafted a careful email. Ms. Callum, you don't know me, but I believe we may have something important to discuss regarding our respective spouses. I have information that I think you should see. Would you be available to meet this week? Best regards, Trent Ardell. I attached the doorbell camera screenshot and sent the email before I could second-guess myself. The reply came back within an hour. Mr. Ardell, thank you for reaching out. I can meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'd like to see the room where this occurred, if that's possible. Rhea Callum. I stared at her response. She wanted to see the room. Not just meet to talk, but actually come to the house. This woman was clearly not going to be a passive victim in whatever game Evan and Fina were playing. I texted Fina. I invited someone over tomorrow at 2 p.m. to discuss the addendum. Hope that works with your schedule. Her response was immediate. Who? Someone with relevant experience in these matters. When I got home that evening, Fina was waiting in the living room. She'd changed into a dress I hadn't seen before, something expensive looking in navy blue. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled like she was going out for the evening. We need to discuss this addendum, she said without preamble. And that photo. What about them? The photo it's not what you think. I sat down in my recliner, the one she'd been trying to get me to replace for 2 years. What is it then? Evan is going through a rough patch with Rhea. He needed a place to stay for the night. It was completely innocent. At 2:17 in the morning? He drove down from Portland. He didn't want to wake us earlier. He drove from Portland to stay one night in our guest room? Fina's composure cracked slightly. It's complicated, Trent. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She stood up and began pacing. Evan and I have remained friends over the years, good friends. When he's having problems, he sometimes needs someone to talk to who knows him well. And he can't do that over the phone? Some conversations require privacy. I nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. That's why I included the overnight guest protocol in the addendum, for situations exactly like this. I'm not signing that thing. That's your choice. But if we're going to continue living in the same house, we need some ground rules, especially if you're planning to have more overnight guests. Fina stopped pacing and stared at me. What's that supposed to mean? It means I believe in being prepared. Speaking of which, I should mention that I've scheduled a mediation intake appointment for Friday, just to get the process started, in case we need it. Mediation? Trent, you're overreacting. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, my wife is having secret overnight visits from her ex-boyfriend and telling me it's about principles. That seems like the kind of situation where we might need a neutral third party. Fina's face flushed red. You're being ridiculous. Maybe, but I'm also being thorough. I stood up. I'm going to grab some dinner. There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you want it. I drove to the Iron Key, a bar downtown where I sometimes met Derek, my oldest friend who worked in IT security. I called him on the way. Derek, it's Trent. You busy tonight? Just debugging some network issues. What's up? I need to pick your brain about something. Can you meet me at the Iron Key? Give me 20 minutes. Derek showed up wearing his usual uniform of jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt. He was thin and pale, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made him invaluable in his field and occasionally difficult to be around socially. You look terrible, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Thanks. I need some advice about home security systems. What kind of advice? I explained the situation without going into too much detail. Derek listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or taking notes on his phone. So, you want to upgrade your existing system? He asked when I finished. I want to make sure I'm getting the full picture of what's happening in my house. Derek grinned. I can help with that. The doorbell camera is a good start, but there are other options. Motion sensors, audio pickups, discrete cameras, all perfectly legal as long as it's your house and you're not recording private spaces like bathrooms. What about common areas? Living room, kitchen, hallways? Fair game. I can set you up with a system that integrates with your existing smart home setup. Everything gets stored in the cloud automatically. How quickly can you do it? I can have basic coverage installed tomorrow morning if you want. Nothing obvious, just a few strategic upgrades to what you already have. I bought Derek another beer and we spent the next hour discussing technical specifications. By the time I got home, Fina's car was gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Sasha's tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. Sasha was Fina's best friend, a fitness instructor who ran in the same social circles and had never particularly liked me. She was the kind of person who posted inspirational quotes on social media and treated every conversation like a therapy session. I went to bed in our master bedroom for the first time in 3 weeks, but sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept circling back to Fina's explanation about Evan needing a place to stay. The story had holes big enough to drive a Tesla through, but I was curious to see how long she'd stick with it. The next morning, Derek arrived at 8 a.m. with a toolbox and a small duffel bag full of equipment. Fina still wasn't home. This won't take long, Derek said, surveying the living room. I'm going to upgrade your existing motion sensors and add a few discrete audio pickups. Everything will look exactly the same, just more sensitive. He worked methodically, replacing components that looked identical to the originals. The new motion sensors had built-in cameras with night vision capabilities. The audio pickups were virtually invisible, embedded in light fixtures and air vents. The system integrates with your phone, Derek explained as he finished up. You'll get notifications for any activity, and everything gets backed up automatically. The audio is voice-activated, so it only records when people are actually talking. What's the range? Full coverage of the main floor, partial coverage upstairs in the hallways. I left the bedrooms alone like you asked. Derek packed up his tools and handed me a small device that looked like a USB drive. Master override for the system. Keep this somewhere safe. If anyone ever tries to disable the security system, you'll still have access to everything. At 1:45 p.m., I was waiting in the living room when a silver BMW pulled into the driveway. The woman who got out was tall and elegant, with short dark hair and the kind of understated confidence that came from genuine success rather than inherited wealth. She wore a charcoal gray suit and carried a leather portfolio. Rhea Callum looked nothing like Fina. Where my wife was blonde and flashy, Rhea was brunette and sophisticated. Where Fina demanded attention, Rhea commanded respect. I opened the door before she could knock. Mr. Ardell? Trent, please. Thank you for coming. She stepped inside and looked around the living room with the practiced eye of someone who evaluated spaces for a living. Nice house. Very open. My wife likes the open concept design. Can I get you some coffee? That would be great. I led her to the kitchen and started the coffee maker. I should mention that Fina isn't here right now. She's been staying with a friend. Convenient timing. I thought so. Rhea set her portfolio on the kitchen island and opened it. Inside were several folders and what looked like a tablet computer. Before we go any further, I want you to know that I appreciate you reaching out. Most people wouldn't have the courage to make that call. Most people probably wouldn't have sent the photo in the first place. True. She accepted the coffee mug I offered her. How long have you suspected? Honestly, about 3 seconds after she told me she needed distance because of her principles. Fina's many things, but principled isn't one of them. Rhea smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Evan told me he was going to Portland on business. He's been making a lot of trips to Portland lately. How long has this been going on? I'm not sure. I started noticing changes about 6 months ago. More business trips, longer hours, new clothes, the usual signs. She opened one of the folders and pulled out a stack of papers. I hired a private investigator last month. The papers were surveillance photos, credit card statements, and hotel receipts. Evan and Fina at a restaurant downtown. Evan's car parked outside a gym I didn't recognize. Hotel charges in Portland that corresponded with dates when Fina had claimed to be visiting her sister. They've been careful, Rhea continued, but not careful enough. I studied the photos. In one, Fina was laughing at something Evan had said, her hand on his arm. She looked happier than I'd seen her in months. What do you want to do about it? I asked. I want them to face consequences, real ones. Rhea's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Evan thinks he's smarter than everyone else. He thinks he can manipulate people and situations to get what he wants without any risk. And Fina thinks she can rewrite history to make herself the victim. Exactly. Rhea closed the folder. I have a proposal for you. Before she could elaborate, we heard a car door slam in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see Fina getting out of her white Mercedes, moving quickly toward the front door. Showtime, I said. Fina burst through the front door calling my name, but stopped short when she saw Rhea sitting at the kitchen island. Who's this? Fina asked, but her voice had gone tight. Fina, I'd like you to meet Rhea Callum, Evan's wife. The color drained from Fina's face, but she recovered quickly. I don't know what you think you're doing, but I think I'm having a conversation about overnight guests, I said. Rhea was just telling me about Evan's recent business trips. Fina looked back and forth between us, clearly trying to calculate her next move. I don't have anything to say to her. That's fine, Rhea said calmly. I have plenty to say to you. I walked over to the living room and picked up the TV remote. Actually, I think we should all watch something together. I pulled up the smart home app on my phone and cast the doorbell camera footage to the big screen. The video began playing, timestamp 2:17 a.m., Evan walking up the driveway with his overnight bag, Fina opening the door in her silk robe. This isn't what it looks like, Fina said quickly. What does it look like? Rhea asked. Evan needed a place to stay. He and I are just friends. Rhea opened her portfolio again and pulled out one of the surveillance photos. Is this what friendship looks like to you? The photo showed Fina and Evan kissing in the parking lot of an upscale hotel. Fina's face went white. I can explain. Don't. I turned off the TV and sat down across from her. I've prepared a cohabitation addendum that covers situations like this. Rhea has some documents of her own. Rhea slid a folder across the island to Fina. Divorce papers. I'm filing on grounds of adultery. I have more than enough evidence. Fina opened the folder with shaking hands. You can't do this. I already did. Evan received his copy this morning. Trent, please, we can work this out. It doesn't have to be like this. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd shared 8 years of my life with, and felt something cold settle in my chest. You're right. It didn't have to be like this. But you made your choice when you decided to lie to me about principles. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? Fina didn't answer. She was reading through the divorce papers, her face getting paler with each page. Rhea stood up and closed her portfolio. I'll leave you two to discuss your options. Trent, you have my number if you need anything. After Rhea left, Fina and I sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. What do you want? I want you to stop lying to me. I'm not lying. I pulled out my phone and opened the smart home app. The new security system records audio in all the common areas. Would you like me to play back your conversation with Evan from 2 nights ago? Fina's mouth opened and closed without sound. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to sign the cohabitation addendum, or you're going to move out. If you choose to stay, you'll follow the rules exactly as written, no exceptions. And if I don't, then I'll file for divorce and make sure everyone in your social circle sees the evidence. Your choice. Fina stared at me for a long moment. I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. You just stopped paying attention. Fina signed the cohabitation addendum the next morning, but not before calling her lawyer to review it. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, spent 2 hours on the phone explaining why the document was legally sound and why fighting it would be expensive and ultimately futile. The overnight guest protocol is reasonable, I heard Patricia say through Fina's speakerphone. And since it's his house too, he has the right to know who's staying there. What about the device access clause? Fina asked. Also reasonable. You're sharing household expenses and accounts. Financial transparency is standard in these situations. After Patricia hung up, Fina slammed the pen down on the kitchen counter. There, happy now? Ecstatic, I said, collecting the signed document. I'll file this with the mediation service and email you a copy for your records. The addendum established clear boundaries that would make it much harder for Fina to continue her secret meetings with Evan. All overnight guests required 24-hour advance notice and had to be registered with the security system. Shared devices and accounts would be monitored. Most importantly, any violation of the agreement would trigger an immediate mediation session. Fina retreated to the guest bedroom and spent the rest of the day on the phone with Sasha. The new audio system picked up fragments of their conversation through the ventilation system. Completely unreasonable, trying to control me. Never been like this before. I was learning more about my wife's true feelings in a few hours of recorded conversation than I had in months of face-to-face discussions. That evening, I met Derek at the Iron Key again. He'd been monitoring the security system remotely and had some interesting observations. Your wife made 17 phone calls today, he said, sliding a printed report across the table. Most of them to the same 3 numbers. I studied the list. Sasha's number appeared 8 times. Her lawyer, Patricia, had been called twice. The third number, which appeared 7 times, wasn't one I recognized. I can run the unknown number if you want, Derek offered. Do it. He pulled out his laptop and typed for a few minutes. Registered to Evan Callum. She called him 7 times today? Yep. And he called her back 4 times. The longest conversation was 37 minutes. I felt that cold sensation in my chest again. Even after being caught, even after signing the addendum, Fina was still in contact with Evan. There's something else, Derek said. The GPS on her car shows she drove to a location downtown this afternoon. Want to guess where? The hotel from Rhea's photo? Bingo. She was there for 2 hours. I stared at the report, trying to process what I was reading. She met him today? After everything that happened yesterday? Looks like it. I ordered another beer and thought about my options. The addendum gave me grounds to demand immediate mediation, but that felt like a nuclear option. I wanted to see how far Fina would push things first. Can you set up monitoring on her phone? I asked. If she connects to your home Wi-Fi, I can capture some of the traffic. Text messages, email, that sort of thing. It's a gray area legally, but since it's your network and your house, you're probably okay. Do it. Derek spent the next hour explaining the technical details. The monitoring system would be passive, capturing data that flowed through our home network without directly accessing Fina's device. It was the digital equivalent of reading mail that was delivered to my address. When I got home, Fina's car was in the driveway, but the house was dark. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Staying in guest room. Please don't disturb." I went upstairs to the master bedroom and opened my laptop. The security system showed Fina had returned home at 6:23 p.m., gone directly to the guest room, and hadn't come out since. The audio pickups detected movement but no conversation. I pulled up the mediation service website and began filling out a violation report. The addendum required 24-hour notice for any meetings with overnight guests, and Fina's hotel visit clearly qualified as a violation. I saved the report as a draft, but didn't submit it yet. The next morning, Fina emerged from the guest room dressed for work in a black suit I'd never seen before. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled in a way that looked expensive and professional. "Good morning," she said coolly. "Morning. How was your evening?" "Fine." I poured myself coffee and pretended to read the news on my phone while actually monitoring the security system. Fina moved through her morning routine efficiently, gathering her purse and laptop bag without making unnecessary conversation. "I'll be working late tonight," she said as she headed for the door. "What time should I expect you home?" She paused with her hand on the doorknob. "I'm not sure. Don't wait up." After she left, I called Rhea. "How are things going with your situation?" I asked. "Evan's been scrambling to find a lawyer. Apparently he's having trouble because most of the good divorce attorneys in town have conflicts of interest." "Conflicts?" "I may have consulted with several of them over the past few weeks. Just to discuss my options, you understand." I had to admire her thoroughness. "What's his next move?" "He's going to try to negotiate, claim it was just an emotional affair, promise to end it, ask for another chance. The usual playbook." "And your response?" "I'm not interested in negotiation. I want him gone." "What about Fina? Any thoughts on how to handle her?" Rhea was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that. Fina strikes me as someone who cares a lot about her image, her reputation." "She does. What if that reputation took some damage?" I thought about Fina's social circle, the group of women she worked out with at the gym, served on charity committees with, competed with for social status. Her identity was built around being envied by other women. "What did you have in mind?" "Let me do some research. I'll call you back." That afternoon, I received a text from Fina. "Working late. Will be home around 11. I checked the GPS tracking on her car. She was at the same downtown hotel where she'd met Evan the day before. I called Derek. "I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves a camera and a hotel parking lot." Derek met me downtown at 7 p.m. We parked across the street from the hotel with a clear view of the entrance and parking garage. Derek had brought a camera with a telephoto lens that could capture license plates from a considerable distance. "This feels very private, investigator," Derek said, adjusting the camera settings. "Rhea hired a real PI. I'm just doing quality control." We didn't have to wait long. At 7:23 p.m., Evan's black Tesla pulled into the parking garage. Fina's white Mercedes was already there, parked on the second level. "Got them both," Derek said, checking the photos on his camera. "Clear shots of both license plates and timestamps." We waited until 10:47 p.m. before both cars left the garage. Fina drove home while Evan headed in the opposite direction. I was sitting in the living room reading when Fina came through the front door. "How was work?" I asked, without looking up from my book. "Busy. Very busy." "What kind of projects are you working on?" Fina hesitated. "Just HR stuff, policy reviews, employee evaluations." "Sounds important." She headed for the stairs. "I'm exhausted. Good night." "Good night." I waited until I heard the guest room door close, then opened my laptop and uploaded the photos Derek had taken. I added them to the growing file in my Fina's Principles folder, along with the GPS data and call logs. The next morning, I had a revelation while shaving. Fina's behavior wasn't just about having an affair, it was about control. She wanted to continue seeing Evan while maintaining the security and social status of being married to me. The principal's conversation had been her attempt to create space for both relationships simultaneously. I called the mediation service and scheduled an emergency session for that afternoon. Then I sent Fina a text. Mediation today at 3 p.m. Violation of overnight guest protocol. See addendum section 4.2. Her response came back immediately. I haven't had any overnight guests. I replied with one of Derek's photos showing both cars in the hotel parking garage, along with the timestamp. Hotel meetings with overnight guests require same notification. See you at 3. The mediation office was in a bland professional building downtown, the kind of place where people went to have difficult conversations with the help of neutral third parties. The mediator, a middle-aged woman named Janet, had reviewed our cohabitation addendum and the violation report I'd filed. Mr. Ardell, you're claiming that Mrs. Ardell violated the overnight guest protocol by meeting with someone at a hotel. Mrs. Ardell, you're claiming that hotel meetings don't fall under the overnight guest provision. Is that correct? Fina sat across from me at the conference table, her lawyer, Patricia, beside her. The addendum specifically mentions overnight guests staying at our house. It doesn't say anything about meeting people elsewhere. I opened my folder and pulled out a copy of the addendum. Section 4.2 states that any meeting with someone who would qualify as an overnight guest requires advance notification. Evan Callum has been an overnight guest, so meetings with him fall under this provision. Patricia leaned forward. That's a very broad interpretation of the language. It's the interpretation we agreed to when Mrs. Ardell signed the document. Janet reviewed the addendum carefully. The language is somewhat ambiguous, but Mr. Ardell's interpretation isn't unreasonable. Mrs. Ardell, were you aware that your husband might consider hotel meetings to be covered by this provision? Fina's face was flushed. I thought it only applied to people staying at our house. Did you ask for clarification before signing? No. Janet made notes on her legal pad. Going forward, how would you both like to handle this situation? I pulled out another document I'd prepared. I'd like to propose an amendment to the addendum. All meetings with former overnight guests require 24-hour advance notification, regardless of location. That's completely unreasonable, Patricia said. Is it? Mrs. Ardell is free to meet with anyone she wants. She just needs to let me know in advance. Fina finally spoke up. What if I don't agree to the amendment? Then I'll file for legal separation and request temporary exclusive use of the house. The room went quiet. Janet looked back and forth between us. Mrs. Ardell, would you like some time to discuss this with your attorney? Fina and Patricia stepped outside for 20 minutes. When they returned, Fina looked defeated. I'll sign the amendment. After the mediation session, I drove to the gym where Fina worked out with her social circle. It was an upscale fitness center in the suburbs, the kind of place where women in expensive workout clothes discussed their personal lives while using elliptical machines. I signed up for a guest pass and spent an hour working out, listening to conversations and observing the social dynamics. Fina's friend Sasha was there, along with several other women I recognized from neighborhood events. The locker room was where the real conversations happened. I couldn't go in there myself, but Derek had given me a small recording device that I could leave in Sasha's gym bag while she was working out. The device was tiny, about the size of a quarter, with a magnetic backing that would stick to the metal frame of a locker. It would record up to 4 hours of audio and automatically upload to a secure server when it detected Wi-Fi. I waited until Sasha went to use the bathroom, then quickly attached the device to the inside of her locker. The whole operation took less than 30 seconds. That evening, Derek called with the results. Your wife's friend has a very interesting perspective on marriage, he said. What did she say? I'll send you the highlights, but the basic summary is that Sasha thinks Fina is being too careful. She's encouraging her to be more aggressive about getting what she wants. The audio file Derek sent me was eye-opening. Sasha's voice was clear and unmistakable. You need to stop letting Trent control the situation. He's just a construction manager. You're smarter than him, you make more money than him, and you have better connections. Why are you letting him push you around? Another woman's voice, someone I didn't recognize. What about the mediation thing? Sasha again. It's just intimidation. He's trying to scare her into backing down. But if she stands her ground, he'll fold. Men like Trent always do. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Sasha offering increasingly bold advice about how Fina should handle the situation. According to Sasha, Fina should refuse to follow the addendum, dare me to file for divorce, and then take him for everything he's worth in the settlement. I listened to the entire recording twice, taking notes on the most relevant sections. Sasha was clearly the driving force behind Fina's recent defiance, encouraging her to escalate the conflict rather than find a resolution. The next morning, I had an idea. I called Rhea and asked if she wanted to meet for coffee. We agreed on a cafe downtown, far from the suburban areas where Fina and her friends might see us. I've been thinking about your suggestion regarding Fina's reputation, I said after we'd ordered. And? I think the key is her social circle. These women compete with each other constantly. Status, appearance, relationships. If Fina's affair became public knowledge in that group, it would destroy her standing. Rhea stirred her coffee thoughtfully. How public are we talking? There's a charity gala next weekend. The hospital fundraiser. Fina's been planning to attend for months. It's the biggest social event of the season for her crowd. Interesting. What did you have in mind? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Derek had taken at the hotel. What if these accidentally got shared with the wrong people? Accidentally? Sasha, Fina's best friend, has been encouraging her to escalate this situation. She thinks Fina should be more aggressive, take bigger risks. What if Sasha got a reality check about what those risks actually look like? Rhea smiled, and again, it wasn't a pleasant expression. I like where this is going. We spent the next hour planning what Rhea called Operation Reality Check. The goal wasn't to humiliate Fina publicly, but to make sure her social circle understood the true nature of her recent behavior. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rhea would attend the hospital gala as Evan's wife, which was her right since they weren't officially divorced yet. She would bring copies of the hotel photos and other evidence, not to distribute publicly, but to share privately with a few key women in Fina's social circle. The gossip network will do the rest, Rhea explained. These women can't keep secrets from each other. By the end of the evening, everyone will know. What about Evan? Will he be there? Oh yes. He doesn't know I'm coming, but he'll be there. He's on the hospital board. This could get messy. It's already messy. We're just making sure everyone else can see it too. That afternoon, I received a text from Fina. Staying late at work again, don't wait up. I checked her car's GPS. She was at the hotel again. I called Derek. I need you to do something that might be slightly illegal. How slightly? Remember that recording device we used at the gym? I want to put one in Fina's car. That's not slightly illegal. That's very illegal. What if I put it in my own car, and then Fina happens to borrow my car? Derek was quiet for a moment. That's actually not illegal at all. You can record conversations in your own vehicle. Perfect. Can you set it up tonight? Derek installed the recording device in my truck that evening, hiding it behind the dashboard where it would be virtually impossible to detect. The device was voice-activated and would record any conversation that took place in the vehicle. The next morning, I left my truck keys on the kitchen counter and took Fina's Mercedes to work instead. When I got home that evening, my truck was gone, and Fina's car was in the driveway. I found a note on the kitchen counter. Borrowed your truck. Mine's making a weird noise. Perfect. Derek called me at 9 p.m. with an update. Your wife picked up a passenger at the hotel at 6:30, he said. Male voice, sounds like it could be Evan. They drove around for about an hour, having a very interesting conversation. What kind of interesting? The kind where they discuss how to handle their respective spouses. I'll send you the audio file. The recording was damning. Fina and Evan had spent an hour discussing strategy for dealing with Rhea and me. They talked about hiding assets, manipulating the mediation process, and coordinating their stories to minimize the consequences of their affair. Evan's voice was smooth and confident. Rhea's just trying to intimidate me. She doesn't have the stomach for a real fight. Fina's response: Trent's the same way. He thinks he's being clever with all these documents and procedures, but he's just scared. He doesn't want to lose me. Evan: the key is to not give them anything they can use against us. We need to be more careful about when and where we meet. Fina: what about the mediation thing? Evan: ignore it. Make him take you to court if he wants to enforce it. By the time that happens, we'll have figured out our next move. The conversation continued in this vein for the entire hour, with both of them demonstrating a complete lack of remorse for their actions and a casual disregard for their marriage vows. I listened to the recording 3 times, making detailed notes. Then I called Rhea. Change of plans for the gala, I said. I have something even better than photos. The hospital charity gala was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, a glittering event that drew the city's social elite. Fina had spent weeks preparing for it, buying a new dress, scheduling hair and makeup appointments, and coordinating with her social circle about arrival times and table arrangements. I wasn't planning to attend originally, but after hearing the recording from my truck, I decided to make an appearance. I rented a tuxedo and bought a ticket at the last minute, claiming I wanted to surprise Fina. Rhea and I had spent the previous day preparing our materials. In addition to the hotel photos, we now had the audio recording of Fina and Evan discussing their strategy. We'd edited the recording to highlight the most damaging sections, creating a 10-minute compilation that told the complete story. Are you sure you want to do this? Rhea asked as we reviewed our plan one final time. They've made their choice, I said. Now they get to live with the consequences. The gala began at 7 p.m. with cocktails and silent auction viewing. I arrived early and positioned myself near the entrance where I could observe without being immediately noticed by Fina or Evan. Fina arrived at 7:30, looking stunning in a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She was accompanied by Sasha and 2 other women from her gym circle, all of them dressed to impress and clearly expecting to be the center of attention. Evan arrived 20 minutes later, wearing an expensive tuxedo and projecting the kind of confident charm that had probably served him well in business and personal relationships. He moved through the crowd easily, shaking hands and making small talk with other board members. Neither of them had noticed me yet. Rhea made her entrance at 8 p.m., just as the cocktail hour was reaching its peak. She wore a simple black dress that was elegant, without being flashy, and she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged in any room she entered. The reaction was immediate. I watched Evan's face go pale when he spotted his wife across the room. Fina, who had been laughing at something Sasha said, suddenly went very still. Rhea moved through the crowd purposefully, stopping to chat with several women I recognized as prominent members of the social scene. She was charming and gracious, giving no indication that anything was wrong. I watched Fina excuse herself from her group and hurry toward the ladies' room. She was clearly rattled by Rhea's unexpected appearance. That's when I made my move. I approached Sasha, who was standing near the silent auction tables with her drink in hand. Sasha, right? I'm Trent, Fina's husband. She looked surprised to see me. Oh, hi Trent. I didn't know you were coming tonight. Last-minute decision. I wanted to surprise Fina. I glanced around the room. Have you seen her? She just stepped away for a moment. She'll be right back. Great. Actually, while I have you here, I wanted to thank you for being such a good friend to Fina during this difficult time. Sasha's expression became guarded. Difficult time? The marriage counseling, the mediation sessions, I know she's been leaning on you for support. Oh, that. Yes, well, I just want what's best for Fina. I pulled out my phone and opened the audio app. I'm sure you do. In fact, I have something I think you'll find interesting. I played a 30-second clip from the recording, the part where Fina and Evan discussed hiding assets and manipulating the legal process. Sasha's face went white as she recognized Fina's voice. Where did you get this? Does it matter? The point is, your advice about being more aggressive seems to have been taken to heart. Before Sasha could respond, I walked away, leaving her standing there with her mouth open. My next stop was the bar, where I ordered a scotch and positioned myself where I could observe the room. Ria was now talking to a group of women that included several wives of hospital board members. She was showing them something on her phone, and their reactions suggested it was quite interesting. Fina returned from the ladies' room looking composed, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She rejoined her group, but kept glancing around the room nervously. Evan was having his own problems. I watched him approach Ria's group, clearly intending to interrupt whatever conversation was taking place. But Ria smoothly excused herself and moved to a different part of the room, leaving Evan to face the curious stares of the women she'd been talking to. The dinner portion of the evening began at 8:30. I found my assigned table, which happened to be 3 tables away from Fina's. I had a clear view of her throughout the meal, and I could see her becoming increasingly agitated as the evening progressed. During the salad course, one of the women from Ria's earlier conversation approached Fina's table and whispered something in her ear. Fina's face went pale, and she excused herself again. During the main course, Sasha left her table and didn't return. By the time dessert was served, it was clear that word was spreading through the room. I could see clusters of women having animated conversations, with frequent glances toward Fina's table and Evan's position near the front of the room. The evening's program included a speech from the hospital's chief of staff, followed by a presentation about the fundraising goals. Evan, as a board member, was scheduled to make remarks about the capital campaign. When Evan took the stage, the room fell unusually quiet. He began his prepared remarks about the importance of community support and the hospital's mission, but there was an undercurrent of tension that everyone could feel. Halfway through his speech, someone's phone buzzed loudly, then another. Within seconds, it seemed like half the room was checking their devices. Ria had just sent the edited audio recording to every contact in her phone who was attending the gala. Evan tried to continue his speech, but the murmur of conversation was growing louder. People were listening to the recording, sharing their phones with tablemates, and reacting with shock and disgust. I watched Fina realize what was happening. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her wine glass, and headed for the exit. But she was intercepted by several women from her social circle, all of them clearly upset and demanding explanations. Evan finished his speech quickly and left the stage, but he was immediately surrounded by other board members who had obviously heard the recording. I finished my dessert and walked over to where Fina was being confronted by her former friends. "Ladies," I said pleasantly, "I hope you're enjoying the evening." One of them, a woman named Jennifer whose husband was a prominent surgeon, turned to me with fire in her eyes. "Did you know about this?" "About what?" "About your wife and Evan Callum." "Oh, that. Yes. I've been aware for a while now." Another woman, whose name I couldn't remember, stepped forward. "How could you let her come here tonight? How could you let her pretend everything was normal?" "I didn't let her do anything. Fina makes her own choices." Fina finally found her voice. "Trent, we need to leave. Now." "Do we?" I was just starting to enjoy myself. The crowd around us was growing larger, and the conversation was becoming heated. Other gala attendees were stopping to watch the drama unfold. Jennifer addressed Fina directly. "Is it true? Are you having an affair with Evan Callum? Fina looked around the circle of faces, all of them waiting for an answer. It's complicated. It's not complicated, I said. It's actually very simple. Fina has been seeing Evan for months. They meet at hotels, they coordinate their stories, and they've been planning how to manipulate their respective divorce proceedings. That's not true, Fina protested. I pulled out my phone and played another section of the recording, this one where Fina laughed about how easy it was to deceive me. The women around us reacted with disgust and anger. These were people who had considered Fina a friend, who had included her in their social circles and trusted her with their confidences. You need to leave, Jennifer said coldly. You're not welcome here. Fina looked at me with pure hatred. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd already destroyed. Fina pushed through the crowd and headed for the exit. I followed at a distance, curious to see what she would do next. In the parking lot, Fina was on her phone, probably calling Evan. But Evan had his own problems. I could see him near the valet stand, surrounded by angry board members who were clearly asking for his resignation. Rhea appeared beside me, looking satisfied with the evening's events. How do you think that went? She asked. Better than I expected. Your timing with the audio recording was perfect. I wanted to make sure everyone heard it at the same time. Harder for them to coordinate damage control that way. We watched as Fina got into her car and drove away, followed shortly by Evan in his Tesla. Neither of them would be welcome at future social events, and their reputations in this community were effectively destroyed. What happens next? Rhea asked. Now we wait and see how they respond. They've lost their social standing, but they still have to deal with the legal consequences. And if they try to fight back? I thought about the folder full of evidence I'd accumulated, the recorded conversations, the documented violations of our cohabitation agreement. Then we show them exactly how much more evidence we have. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Fina and 43 text messages. Most of them were variations on the same theme: anger, accusations, and demands that I fix this situation. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called my lawyer and scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. It was time to move from defense to offense, and I wanted to make sure I had all my legal options clearly mapped out. Derek called around noon with an update on the social media fallout from the gala. It's everywhere, he said. The recording is being shared on every local social media group. Fina and Evan are getting absolutely destroyed in the comments. What kind of comments? The kind that make it clear they'll never be welcome in polite society again. These people take their social hierarchies very seriously. That afternoon, my lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Martinez, reviewed all the evidence I'd gathered. This is incredibly thorough, she said, after listening to the recordings and reviewing the documentation. You have grounds for divorce based on adultery, and the cohabitation agreement gives you significant leverage in any settlement negotiations. What about Fina's options? Can she fight this? She can try, but her position is very weak. The evidence is overwhelming, and her violations of the cohabitation agreement are clearly documented. How long will the process take? If she contests it, we could be looking at 6 to 12 months. But given the strength of your position, I suspect she'll want to settle quickly and quietly. Rebecca was wrong about the timeline. Fina didn't want to settle quickly or quietly. She wanted to fight. I found out just how much she wanted to fight when I arrived home that evening to find the locks changed and my belongings piled on the front lawn. Standing on my own front lawn, looking at my clothes and personal items scattered across the grass, I felt a strange sense of calm. Fina had just made the biggest mistake of her life, and she didn't even realize it. I called Rebecca Martinez from my truck. She changed the locks and put my stuff outside, I reported. She can't do that. It's your house too. I know. What's my next move? Call the police, file a report, then we go to court tomorrow morning for an emergency hearing. The responding officer, A middle-aged sergeant named Williams was professional and thorough. He took photos of my belongings on the lawn, documented the changed locks, and confirmed that my name was on the deed and mortgage. "This is illegal eviction," he explained. "She can't lock you out of your own home." "Can you make her let me back in?" "I can try to convince her, but if she refuses, you'll need a court order." Sergeant Williams knocked on the door for 5 minutes before Fina finally answered. I could hear raised voices through the closed door, but couldn't make out the specific words. After 10 minutes, the officer returned to where I was loading my belongings into my truck. "She says you're abusive, and she's afraid for her safety," he reported. "Did she file a restraining order?" "No, and without one, she can't legally prevent you from entering your own home." "So what happens now?" "You can insist on your right to enter, and I'll escort you inside. Or you can find somewhere else to stay tonight and handle this through the courts tomorrow." I thought about my options. Forcing my way back into the house would be legally justified but emotionally messy. It would also give Fina ammunition for her claims about my behavior. "I'll handle it through the courts," I decided. I spent the night at Derek's apartment, using his spare bedroom and his Wi-Fi to prepare for the next day's court hearing. Rebecca had filed an emergency motion for exclusive use of the marital home, citing Fina's illegal eviction and violation of the cohabitation agreement. "The judge is going to be very unhappy about the lock change," Rebecca predicted. "That's exactly the kind of behavior that family courts hate to see." The emergency hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. I arrived at the courthouse early, wearing my best suit and carrying a folder full of documentation. Rebecca met me outside the courtroom to review our strategy. "Keep your answers short and factual," she advised. "Don't let your emotions show, no matter what Fina or her lawyer say." Fina arrived with Patricia Chen and a man I didn't recognize, someone older and more expensive looking than Patricia. They'd clearly decided this was worth bringing in reinforcements. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s named Judge Harrison, reviewed our filings quickly and got straight to the point. "Mrs. Ardell, did you change the locks on the marital home and place your husband's belongings outside?" Patricia stood up. "Your Honor, my client was acting in self-defense. She has reasonable fears for her safety based on her husband's recent behavior." "What behavior specifically?" "He's been monitoring her activities, recording her conversations, and engaging in a pattern of harassment and intimidation." Judge Harrison turned to Rebecca. "How does your client respond to these allegations?" Rebecca stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Ardell installed a security system in his own home and monitored activities that violated a cohabitation agreement that Mrs. Ardell voluntarily signed. There is no evidence of harassment or intimidation." "Mrs. Ardell," the judge addressed Fina directly, "have you filed for a restraining order?" "No, Your Honor." "Have you reported any threats or violence to the police?" "No, Your Honor." "Then on what basis did you believe you had the right to change the locks on a home that your husband co-owns?" Fina's new lawyer, who introduced himself as Robert Sterling, stood up. "Your Honor, we believe that the cohabitation agreement itself is evidence of controlling behavior. Mr. Ardell has created an oppressive environment that forced our client to take defensive action." Judge Harrison was clearly not impressed. "Mr. Sterling, your client signed that agreement voluntarily after consulting with counsel. She cannot now claim it's oppressive simply because she doesn't want to follow it." The judge reviewed the cohabitation agreement and the evidence of Fina's violations. She also looked at the police report from the previous evening and the photos of my belongings on the lawn. "Mrs. Ardell, you have violated both the cohabitation agreement and your husband's legal rights as a co-owner of the marital home. I'm ordering you to provide Mr. Ardell with new keys immediately and to restore his full access to the property." Fina's face went red. "Your Honor, I don't feel safe." "If you don't feel safe, Mrs. Ardell, you are free to find alternative accommodations, but you cannot prevent your husband from accessing his own home," Judge Harrison continued. "Furthermore, I'm finding that Mrs. Ardell has materially violated the cohabitation agreement through her unauthorized meetings and failure to provide required notifications. Mr. Ardell, are you requesting any additional relief? Rebecca stood again. Yes, Your Honor. We're requesting that Mrs. Ardell be required to account for all marital assets and that both parties be prohibited from disposing of any significant assets pending resolution of their marital issues. Granted, Mrs. Ardell, you will provide a complete accounting of all marital assets within 10 days. Both parties are enjoined from transferring, selling, or hiding any assets worth more than $500. The hearing was over in less than 30 minutes. Fina was ordered to give me new keys within 2 hours, and she was clearly furious about the outcome. Outside the courthouse, I could hear her arguing with her lawyers. This is ridiculous, she was saying. He's the one who's been spying on me and harassing me. Robert Sterling's response was calm but firm. Mrs. Ardell, you need to understand that your position is very weak. The evidence against you is overwhelming, and your behavior last night only made things worse. So, what do you suggest? I suggest you consider settlement negotiations. The longer this drags out, the more expensive it becomes, and the more evidence Mr. Ardell can gather. I pretended not to hear this conversation as I walked past them toward the parking garage, but it was clear that Fina's legal team was already advising her to cut her losses. That afternoon, I returned to the house with the new keys Fina had reluctantly provided. She wasn't there, but she'd left evidence of her mourning throughout the common areas. Dishes in the sink, coffee cups on the counter, and what looked like legal documents spread across the dining room table. I took photos of everything, including the legal documents, which appeared to be asset disclosure forms. Then, I activated the enhanced security system Derek had installed and settled in to wait for Fina's next move. I didn't have to wait long. At 6 p.m., Fina returned with Sasha and another woman I didn't recognize. They were clearly there to pack up more of Fina's belongings, but they stopped short when they saw me sitting in the living room. "What are you doing here?" Fina demanded. "I live here. The judge was very clear about that this morning. I need to get some things from upstairs." "Go ahead. Just remember that the security system is recording everything." Fina and her friends went upstairs, and I listened to their conversation through the audio pickups Derek had installed. "This is insane," Sasha was saying. "He can't just spy on you in your own home." "It's his home too," the other woman pointed out. "Legally, he has the right to install security systems." Fina's voice was bitter. "He's trying to make me so uncomfortable that I'll just leave." "Maybe you should leave," Sasha suggested. "Find your own place. Start fresh." "With what money? He's frozen all the accounts." "What about Evan? Can he help?" There was a long pause before Fina answered. "Evan has his own problems right now." That was an understatement. According to Derek's research, Evan had been forced to resign from the hospital board and was facing his own divorce proceedings. His business was also suffering as word of his behavior spread through the professional community. The women came back downstairs carrying several suitcases and boxes. Fina avoided eye contact with me as they loaded everything into Sasha's car. "I'll be staying with Sasha for a while," Fina announced as they prepared to leave. "That's fine. Just remember to update your address with the court for service of process." After they left, I called Rhea to update her on the day's events. "How is Evan handling the fallout?" I asked. "Not well. He's been calling me constantly, trying to negotiate. He wants to reconcile and pretend none of this happened." "What's your response?" I told him that ship sailed when he decided to record himself discussing how to manipulate our divorce proceedings. "Any word on his business situation?" 3 of his major clients have terminated their contracts. Apparently, having an executive who publicly humiliates himself at charity galas is bad for their brand image. We talked for another 20 minutes about our respective legal strategies. Rhea's divorce was proceeding quickly since Evan was eager to settle and minimize further damage to his reputation. My situation was more complicated because Fina seemed determined to fight despite her weak position. That evening, I received a call from Rebecca with an update on Fina's asset disclosure. She's trying to claim that several significant assets are her separate property, Rebecca reported. The Mercedes, her jewelry, some investment accounts. Is that legitimate? Some of it might be, but she's going to need documentation to prove it. The burden is on her to show that these assets weren't acquired during the marriage with marital funds. What about the investment accounts? Those are interesting. She's claiming they were gifts from her parents, but the timing suggests they were funded during your marriage. We'll need to subpoena bank records to verify the source of the funds. The next few days settled into a routine. Fina would come to the house during the day while I was at work, presumably to gather more belongings or meet with her lawyers. I would review the security footage each evening, documenting her activities and any visitors she brought to the house. On Thursday, the security system captured something interesting. Fina had brought Evan to the house. The audio recording of their conversation was revealing. Fina: I can't keep staying at Sasha's. She's getting tired of the drama. Evan: what about getting your own place? Fina: with what money? Trent has control of all the accounts, and my lawyer says it could take months to get access to my share. Evan: I could help with the deposit and first month's rent. Fina: what about your situation with Rhea? Evan: she's being unreasonable. She wants everything, the house, the business, even my retirement accounts. Fina: can she do that? Evan: only if I let her. I'm thinking about transferring some assets offshore, somewhere she can't touch them. This was exactly the kind of conversation I'd been hoping to capture. Evan was discussing asset concealment, which was both illegal and grounds for serious sanctions in divorce proceedings. I immediately sent the recording to Rebecca and called Rhea to let her know what Evan was planning. Asset concealment? Rhea sounded pleased rather than concerned. That's perfect. If he tries to hide assets, the judge can award me everything as a penalty. Are you going to warn him not to do it? Absolutely not. I'm going to let him dig his own grave. Friday morning brought a new development. I arrived at work to find a process server waiting for me with a thick envelope of legal documents. Fina was suing me for emotional distress, invasion of privacy, and harassment. She was asking for exclusive use of the marital home, temporary alimony, and damages for the public humiliation I had allegedly caused her. I called Rebecca immediately. This is desperation, she said, after I read her the key points of the lawsuit. She's trying to change the narrative and put you on the defensive. Can she win? Not based on what I've seen. You have documentation for everything you've done, and most of it was legally justified. The emotional distress claim is particularly weak since she was the one having the affair. What's our response strategy? We file a countersuit: adultery, breach of the cohabitation agreement, violation of fiduciary duties. We ask for attorney's fees, exclusive use of the home, and a larger share of the marital assets. How long will this take to resolve? If both sides keep escalating like this, could be a year or more. I thought about that timeline and realized I was prepared for a long fight. Fina had chosen to make this as difficult and expensive as possible, which meant she would face the full consequences of that decision. That evening, I was reviewing the day's security footage when I noticed something unusual. Fina had been in the house for 3 hours that afternoon, much longer than her previous visits. The cameras showed her spending most of that time in my home office, going through files and using my computer. I checked my computer's access logs and discovered that someone had attempted to access my financial accounts and email. The attempts had failed because I'd changed all my passwords after the lock incident, but the intent was clear. Fina was looking for evidence she could use against me, or possibly trying to find assets she could claim in the divorce. I documented everything and added it to my growing file of evidence. Fina's behavior was becoming increasingly desperate and reckless, which meant she was likely to make more mistakes. The question was, How far would she go before she realized she was only making her situation worse? I was about to find out. The answer to my question came on Monday morning when I arrived at work to find my boss, Jim Patterson, waiting for me with a grim expression. "Trent, we need to talk," he said, gesturing toward his office. I followed him inside, already suspecting what this was about. "I received a call this morning from someone claiming to be your wife," Jim began. "She made some very serious allegations about your behavior." "What kind of allegations?" "She said you've been stalking her, recording her private conversations, and engaging in harassment. She also claimed that you've been using company resources for personal matters." I sat back in my chair, feeling that familiar cold sensation in my chest. Fina was now trying to destroy my career in addition to everything else. "Jim, I can explain everything that's been happening." "I hope you can, because she's threatening to file complaints with the state licensing board and the police if we don't take action." I spent the next hour walking Jim through the entire situation, starting with Fina's affair and moving through the cohabitation agreement, the legal proceedings, and the evidence I'd gathered. I showed him copies of court documents and explained the legal basis for everything I'd done. Jim listened carefully, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. "So, the security system in your house is legal?" he asked. "Completely legal. It's my home, and I have the right to install security systems." "And the recordings?" "All made in common areas of my own house or in my own vehicle. No expectation of privacy." Jim reviewed the court documents, paying particular attention to Judge Harrison's ruling that had restored my access to the house. "It looks like the court has already determined that your wife's claims about harassment are unfounded," he observed. "That's correct. She tried to have me removed from the house, and the judge rejected her arguments." "What about the company resources allegation?" "I've never used company equipment or time for personal matters related to this situation. Everything I've done has been on my own time with my own resources." Jim nodded slowly. "I believe you, Trent, but this situation is creating problems for the company. We can't have employees' personal lives affecting our business relationships." "I understand. What do you need from me?" "I need this resolved quickly and quietly. Can you do that?" I thought about Fina's escalating behavior and her apparent willingness to destroy anyone who got in her way. "I'm trying to resolve it, but Fina seems determined to make this as messy as possible." "Then maybe it's time to give her a reason to stop." That afternoon, I called Rebecca and asked her to schedule an emergency meeting with Fina's legal team. "I want to make a final settlement offer," I explained. "Something that gives her a way out but makes it clear that further escalation will be very expensive for her." "What did you have in mind?" "She gets the Mercedes, her personal belongings, and a reasonable share of the liquid assets. I keep the house and my retirement accounts. No alimony, no claims for emotional distress. That's generous given the strength of your position. It's also final. If she rejects it, we go nuclear." The meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at Rebecca's office. Fina arrived with both Patricia Chen and Robert Sterling, suggesting she was taking this seriously. Rebecca laid out our settlement offer clearly and professionally. Fina would receive approximately 40% of the marital assets, which was fair considering her adultery and violations of the cohabitation agreement. "This offer expires at 5 p.m. Friday," Rebecca concluded. "If it's not accepted, we'll proceed with our countersuit and discovery process." Robert Sterling reviewed the terms carefully. "This is below what Mrs. Ardell would be entitled to under normal circumstances." "These aren't normal circumstances," Rebecca replied. "Mrs. Ardell committed adultery, violated a legally binding agreement, and has engaged in increasingly erratic behavior. The court is unlikely to be sympathetic." Patricia leaned over to whisper something to Fina, who shook her head vigorously. "My client needs time to consider this offer," Robert said. "She has until Friday at 5 p.m. After the meeting, I went home to find that Fina had been there again. This time, she'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "We need to talk. Tonight, 8 p.m. I texted back, "Fine, but the security system stays on." At exactly 8 p.m., Fina arrived alone. She looked tired and stressed, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual, carefully coordinated outfits. "Can we sit down?" she asked. We sat at opposite ends of the living room, the same space where this had all started weeks ago. "I want to explain something," Fina began, "about Evan and me. I think I understand the situation pretty clearly." "No, you don't. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." I waited for her to continue. "Evan contacted me 6 months ago. He said he was having problems with Rhea and needed someone to talk to. We started meeting for coffee, just as friends. And then it became more. But it wasn't about not loving you, Trent. It was about feeling like I was disappearing in this marriage." "Disappearing how?" Fina was quiet for a long moment. "You never really saw me. You saw the wife you wanted me to be, but not who I actually was." "Who are you actually?" "I don't know anymore. That's the problem." I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 8 years and realized she was right about one thing. I didn't really know who she was, but I also realized that I didn't particularly want to know. "What do you want, Fina?" "I want to stop fighting. I want to end this without destroying each other completely." "Then accept the settlement offer." "It's not enough. I need more to start over." "You should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair." Fina's composure cracked. "I made a mistake, okay? I know that. But you've been punishing me for months. The recordings, the legal documents, the public humiliation. When is it enough? When you stop trying to rewrite history. When you stop pretending you're the victim in this situation." "I am a victim. You destroyed my reputation, my friendships, my entire social life." "I didn't destroy anything. I just made sure people could see what you'd already done." We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Fina spoke again. "What if I told you I was willing to end things with Evan? What if we tried counseling? Are you willing to do that?" I don't know. Maybe." "That's not good enough, Fina. You can't be maybe willing to end an affair." "It's complicated." "No, it's not. It's actually very simple. You're either committed to this marriage or you're not." Fina stared at the floor. "I don't think I am. Committed to the marriage, I mean." "Then we're done here." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Just like that?" "Just like that." Fina left without saying goodbye. I watched her drive away and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The next morning, I received a call from Rebecca. "Fina's team called," she said. "They're accepting the settlement offer." "All of it?" "All of it. They want to finalize everything as quickly as possible." "What changed their mind?" "I suspect they realized that fighting this would only make things worse for her. The evidence against her is overwhelming, and her behavior has been increasingly erratic." "How long until it's final?" 30 days if everything goes smoothly." That afternoon, I called Rhea to update her on the settlement. "Congratulations," she said. "How does it feel?" "Anticlimactic, actually. I thought I'd feel more... something." "Satisfaction? Vindication?" "Maybe. Mostly, I just feel tired." "That's normal. This kind of situation takes a toll, even when you win." "What about your situation with Evan?" "Finalized yesterday. He tried to hide some assets offshore, just like we heard him planning. The judge was not amused." "What did he end up with?" "His clothes and his car. I got everything else." We talked for a few more minutes about practical matters, dividing belongings, changing locks, updating insurance policies, the mundane details of untangling a life. That evening, I sat in my living room now, and thought about what came next. The house felt different already, quieter, but also somehow more solid. Derek came over with pizza and beer to celebrate what he called The end of the Fina era. "So what's the plan now?" he asked. "Dating apps? Gym membership? Motorcycle?" I was thinking about renovating the kitchen. That's the most boring midlife crisis response I've ever heard. I'm not having a midlife crisis. I'm having a midlife renovation. We spent the evening watching a game and not talking about relationships or legal proceedings or surveillance equipment. It was the most normal evening I'd had in months. 3 weeks later, I was reviewing blueprints for the kitchen renovation when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Trent, it's Sasha." I was surprised to hear from Fina's former best friend. "Hi, Sasha. What can I do for you?" I wanted to apologize for encouraging Fina to fight you, for not understanding what was really happening. "You don't need to apologize to me." "Yes, I do. I gave her terrible advice because I didn't have all the facts. I thought you were being controlling and manipulative." "What changed your mind?" "She's been staying with different friends since the settlement, and she keeps telling different versions of the story. The details don't match up." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes you're an abusive husband. Sometimes you're a controlling stalker. Sometimes you're just boring and she needed excitement. She can't seem to decide which narrative to stick with." "Maybe they're all true from her perspective." "Maybe. But I don't think she knows what's true anymore. I think she's lost track of reality." After Sasha hung up, I thought about that conversation for a long time. Fina's inability to maintain a consistent story wasn't just about lying to other people. It was about lying to herself. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in November. I signed the papers in Rebecca's office, and Fina signed them somewhere else. We didn't see each other. "How does it feel to be a free man?" Rebecca asked as she handed me the final decree. "Like the end of a very long construction project." "Good metaphor. What's the next project?" I thought about the kitchen renovation, about the quiet house, about the possibility of building something new instead of just documenting what had been torn down. I'm not sure yet, but I'm looking forward to finding out. That evening, I called my parents to let them know the divorce was final. My mother asked if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted to come visit. "I'm fine, Mom. Actually, I'm better than fine." "Are you sure? Divorce is a big change." "It is, but not all changes are bad." After I hung up, I walked through the house, room by room. The guest room where Fina had moved when she needed distance. The kitchen where we'd had our last real conversation. The living room where I'd played the doorbell camera footage that started everything. The house felt different now. Not empty, but spacious. Not lonely, but peaceful. I opened my laptop and deleted the Fina's Principles folder. I didn't need those files anymore. The story was over, and it had ended exactly the way it should have. With the truth.